Chapter 19 George Kelly's Personal Construct Theory by Jennifer Tellez, University of the Incarnate Word. In the first few slides, I will be discussing George Kelly's biography, educational achievements, and professional accomplishments. George Kelly was born in 1905 and became a psychologist out of humble beginnings. Kelly's well-educated and religious parents focused on Kelly's education. This allowed him to make many transitions throughout his educational journey and life. Growing up on a farm piqued Kelly's interest, and he studied agriculture. When he moved away to attend school, he was introduced to new ideas. This led him to become more aware of social issues. Kelly's educational achievements included a master's in educational sociology and a minor in labor relations and sociology, along with a PhD in speech and reading. Kelly dabbled academically in education, sociology, economics, labor relations, biometrics, speech pathology, anthropology, and finally, majoring in psychology. During the Great Depression, Kelly's professional career began to take shape and helped him to realize that high school and college students needed direction and guidance to pursue their goals. Kelly's own discovery of his floundering around and indecisiveness prompted him to become a psychotherapist. His counseling gave him the opportunity to serve the United States Navy as an aviation psychologist. It is in wartime when Kelly began to form a theory of personality, which brings us to his most important work of personal construct theory. Now that you know a bit of George Kelly's background, let us delve into his eclectic theory. George Kelly's personal construct theory is like no other personality theory. Cognitive, behavioral, existential, and phenomenological theories have been associated to Kelly, but none of those theories are a correct description of his theory. His theory has been described as a theory of theories. Kelly's theory was very unique, and he could not be compared to any of his peers. The definition, breakdown, and description of the personal construct theory is not as complicated as it seems despite its intricacies. The definition of personal constructs are the actions our minds take that anticipate and interpret events, yet we are all the same in our different interpretations. Now, the description of George Kelly's theory can be described as how we interpret, view, and examine events in our life based upon our experiences which occur within our world. And the key word here is our world. For example, let's say when you were young, about the age of 10, you and a friend are riding along on your bikes and a chihuahua begins to chase you both. This particular event has now changed your interpretation of your world. You are now fearful not only of the chihuahua, but of all dogs while riding a bike, which could then lead to a dislike or fear of all dogs together, and you are now hesitant to ride your bike. Hence, your world has been changed. As for your friend, he thought the event was funny, and he still loves dogs and still loves to ride his bike. He has no fear or dislike. Personal constructs develop early in life and continue to develop as the child becomes more aware. Within Kelly's theory, he described people as being scientists. He believed that people process their reality as a scientist would. A study by Viney acknowledged people as co-experimenters when using Kelly's approach in therapy. People ask questions, form a hypothesis, test the hypothesis, draw conclusions upon it, and predict future events, alleviating a certain amount of stress or danger that you are anticipating. Knowing how a person is a scientist, you can now reflect upon the example given of the Chihuahua. Kelly's theory also described scientists as people. In this instance, scientists were just as a person in that their theory or prediction could falter, leaving the door open to create new and better theories. Constructive alternativism was George Kelly's philosophical view on how personal construct affects particular times in our lives. Kelly believed we're not victims of our lives or our circumstances. He believed that we all created our own truth of what the facts are. An example of this can be that my truth as to how I see an event or situation is not the same as another person would interpret the same event and or situation. The basic postulate, according to the authors of the book Theories of Personality, explain that people's behaviors, thoughts, and actions are directed by the way they see the future. And through George Kelly's basic postulate arose 11 corollaries. The 11 corollaries and a brief description of them are as follows. The construction corollary equates to anticipation rooted in past experiences. The experience corollary equates to when expected events fail and change the experience. The individuality corollary equates to everyone's views and experiences in that they are different. The organizational corollary equates to the order of perceived experiences. The dichotomy corollary equates to the differences of experiences and view of a person's world. The range corollary equates to a restriction on the processes of experiences. The commonality corollary equates to others and the similar experiences. The modulation corollary equates to adjustment to new experiences. The choice corollary equates to choices of how to deal with new experiences. The fragmentation corollary equates to inconsistent experiences that are under a similar construct. And the sociality corollary equates to understanding others' experiences. Corollaries form pathways from the perception of a person's particular personal construct. One study shows that adolescents are better able to maneuver through a threatening event or situation in their life when they were well adjusted and successful academically, which guides them to a productive pathway with the ability to problem solve. Kelly believed psychologically healthy people were able to interpret their personal construct and evaluate it and compare it to the reality of the world. Unfortunately, not everyone is psychologically healthy. Therefore, Kelly viewed the unhealthy person as a person who had difficulty letting go of past experiences, hindering their adjustments to the present experiences. He also saw psychologically unhealthy people as being inflexible when it came to experiences that produced a threat, guilt, anxiety, or fear. A recent study observed how guilt and threat affected the gay and lesbian community. The findings were that within the community, gay and lesbian individuals internalized threat and guilt, leading them to separate from their self-identity. In essence, when a person feels a threat, guilt, anxiety, or fear, they are more apt to remain in their comfort zone. To alleviate abnormal development, Kelly's approach to psychotherapy was client-centered and focused on clients reaching their goals. One of Kelly's techniques was called fixed role therapy, in which the client and therapist would role play in the safe environment of therapy, and the client would eventually reach their realistic goals in life. A study published in the Journal of Family Psychology studied personal construct and therapy within a family environment. The various family roles were looked at from children to the elderly within the family. There was a shift in roles as family members aged. The once independent elderly family member became more dependent through the progression of age and the onset of illness, disease, or disability. Caring for an elderly family member affected the family unit's personal constructs. The goals of the family changed, and therapy was used to help establish and achieve the new goals. Along with fixed role therapy, George Kelly also developed another therapy technique called the Role Construct Repertory Test, or for short, the REP test. The REP test also dealt with the roles of a person, except this test assessed personal construct through the association of roles. One case study followed a client through therapy and evaluated the success of the REP test at completion of therapy and at a 6-month follow-up. The REP test revealed that there was success in the client's self-perception and the perception of their experiences. Kelly's theory was an advanced theory in the sense that it impacted psychology by producing vast empirical research. He combined both social and cognitive aspects of psychology. In a study by Michelle, it shows the cognitive and social aspects of Kelly's theory and says that through careful listening, a therapist can help analyze self-characterization in a client's world. 3 of the most influential research generated by Kelly's theory deal with gender, internalized prejudice, and the Big Five personality traits. The gender study found that when people lack information in regards to gender, stereotypes are formed not only with unfamiliar people, but also with family and friends. The internalized prejudice study discovered that internalizing a negative view of oneself or their culture can make a person prejudiced towards themselves and or their culture. The last and probably most important study was done comparing his theory using the REP test and the Big Five personality traits. What was revealed was that the two tests complemented each other, giving a better idea about a person. Regardless of the limited research Kelly actually did, his theory has been tried, tested, and argued, giving the psychological community much validity and room to self-correct. I have concocted 3 theories: the cyclical theory, the in and out theory, and the relational theory. For the sake of time and slide content, I will only be discussing the relational theory. The relational theory, like my other 3, are based on the biopsychosocial model. My thought for this theory is if there is a predisposition of personality and behavior through our genes, which produces the motivation for cognition, and when an environment allows a person to develop socially, then everything is related. I believe this theory is basic and logical because it includes all areas that develop a person's personality. For instance, genes are linked to our cognition and environment. Our cognition is linked to our genes and environment. Our environment is linked to our genes and cognition. An example of this instance would be that we're born with genes that are passed down from our parents that contribute to our drive to learn, and if our environment contains all the resources, then we will succeed, and this scenario can be construed in a vice versa form with a continuous correlation. If there are abnormalities in genes, cognition, or the environment, the personality then is altered. In conclusion, my relational theory has the same aspects of the roles of cognition and social environment as George Kelly's personal construct theory. And like him, I also recognize that there are variables that can contribute to abnormalities. My theory was constructed using George Kelly's theory in that I observed my environment and experiences, forming a theory as a scientist would.